Okay, Writing 101 students at Flathead Valley Community College. This is Lowell Yeager again, and this is video number 3. I'm going to be talking about a logical fallacy called false dichotomy, also known as black and white thinking. And also we will be talking about the term metacognition. So just to review quickly, in our first video we talked about your writing is only as good as your thinking, and that writing and thinking are inextricably bound together. You have to be a good thinker to be a good writer. It's not as simple as just being grammatically correct or getting all of your spelling right. You have to have good thoughts too, worthwhile thoughts that are good examples of good thinking. So then we looked at, in video 2, we looked at your textbook, You Are Not So Smart by David McRaney. And there were 2 big ideas especially that you should take away from that video. And one is David McRaney's statement that we are unaware of how unaware we are. You are unaware of how unaware you are. I am unaware of how unaware I am. And that's a little hard to digest for some people, but it's the beginning of learning. If you can accept that thought, then you can proceed to do better. And that's the other message from this book, which is good thinking is a skill that can be learned through study and practice. And so what we're doing is we're studying and practicing good thinking, because this course is all about writing, and in order to be a good writer, you must be a good thinker. Okay, so this is a place now where we can talk about this idea of false dichotomy. False dichotomy. A dichotomy means a division in two. Two things, right? If you can picture a spectrum between my fingers here, my fingers are the poles of that spectrum. And so when we say we are a polarized political culture, we mean that a lot of people are at one extreme or the other extreme. We're very polarized. But look, there's all this space in the middle, right? All this space in the middle. And so you don't have to be on one end of the spectrum or the other end. There's lots of places in between. A false dichotomy says there's no place in between. So underneath there, where it says polarized political culture, I've written a quote that you will hear a lot from causes, people pushing one cause or another. And it goes, if you are not with us, you are against us. Think about that a moment. Do you see how that's a false dichotomy? If you are not one thing, then you must be the other thing. There's no middle ground. And that's a logical fallacy, a false dichotomy. You can be lots of things in between. So black and white thinking is a logical fallacy because it only gives you those 2 options, either one side or the other. But think about this. Isn't it possible to be on neither side? To be neutral? To see both sides have valid reasons and goals in mind? Isn't it possible to find middle ground? Isn't it possible to compromise? It is the mark of an educated mind. This is from Aristotle. He said, it is the mark of an educated mind to hold and examine an idea without accepting or rejecting it. Do you see how that avoids false dichotomy? You can hold an idea and examine an idea in your mind without having to accept it or without having to reject it. So if somebody says to us, if you are not with us, you are against us, that's nonsense. You can be lots of things in between. In fact, the smartest thing a good thinker does is say, well, just tell me more. I want more information about who you are and who the other side is too. So here's something to think about. This is an interesting thing to think about, okay? Consider this. What exactly is ignorance? You know, we call someone ignorant. What do we mean when we say you're ignorant? For example, John, a fictitious character, John, has convinced himself he knows something he truly doesn't know. He may even be that kind of guy that professes to be an expert, although he's studied only one side of the issue, and there's large gaps in what he knows, in his knowledge. Jane, fictitious character named Jane, on the other hand, Jane freely admits, I don't know, she says, I don't know. Now, which of those two is more ignorant? John, who thinks he knows something he really doesn't, or Jane, who knows for sure she doesn't know? It's a little paradox there, isn't there? Who is more ready to learn, John or Jane? John already thinks he knows everything. Jane says, I don't know, so she's more open to learning. And which of these two is more unaware? I'll let you think about that question. Which of these two is more unaware? Because these questions are worth thinking about, worth giving some thought. Speaking of giving some thought, let's look at metacognition. So, if you know the word cognition, cognition just means thinking. Metacognition means thinking about your thinking, right? So cognition is one thing, metacognition is a little higher skill, right? We can all think, but not all of us are aware of our thinking. That would be metacognition. Metacognition is the practice of listening to our own thoughts in an effort to recognize emotional distortions or logical fallacies, and the difference between what we know and we don't know. Cognition means thinking. Metacognition means thinking about our thinking. In other words, metacognition can be a tool we use to become more aware of our thinking. If you are unaware of how unaware you are, here's a tool you can use to become more aware. Metacognition. You can learn to think about, to examine and evaluate your own thinking. To start, let me ask you this. Are you a heart person or a brain person? Or another way to ask this question is, who rules, your heart or your brain? Think about that. Which would you choose? Aha! Some of you already have caught on, and you're saying that my question is a bad question. It's forcing you into a false dichotomy, isn't it? It's forcing you into black and white thinking. All right, so that's good that you already picked up on that. But as soon as I asked the question, something in you chafed at that question and said, wait a minute, I'm not just one or the other, I can be both, right? You transcended that false dichotomy. You maybe said, I maybe lean toward the heart most often, but I also use my brain. Or you said the opposite. Maybe I favor logic and the brain more often, but I also use my heart. My heart is there too. I'm a human being. I have both heart and brain. This realization that we are both heart and brain, that as humans we do both thinking and feeling, that we are logical and emotional, is the key to understanding metacognition. We are both logical and emotional, and that's the key to understanding metacognition. Simplistic thinkers claim that thinking and feeling are two separate things, a false dichotomy. But are they? Don't your thoughts affect how you feel? Have you realized that yet, that your thoughts can affect how you feel? And on the other hand, how do your feelings affect how you think? Have you realized that your feelings can also affect your thoughts? That's worth discussing with your peers in the classroom. You see it now, maybe you're beginning to pick up on that metacognition is a new level of awareness, a higher level of awareness. Our thoughts and our emotions are related, and in order to examine our thoughts, we also have to pay attention to our emotions. And in order to examine our emotions, we also have to pay attention to our thoughts. So we have quarreling voices in our heads. I know that sounds funny, but it's true, isn't it? You've got quarreling voices in your head. Metacognition is the voice in your head which steps back from that quarrel and wants to see things clearly. Okay, says metacognition, what's going on here? Metacognition says, heart, let's not get carried away with emotions because I know emotions can cloud my reason. And it says, brain, you be careful with what you're telling me because I know what seems like your logic can at times be misleading and less than reasonable. So metacognition is the sort of master of both heart and brain and mediates between the two and helps them come to some sort of understanding. That's what happens when you practice metacognition. The quarrel in your head oftentimes becomes clarified. Your heart and your brain become partners again. So metacognition helps us find that wise middle ground, oftentimes, between the poles of polarized thinking, helps us overcome logical fallacies like false dichotomy and others we will be talking about in videos to come. In the next video, video number 4, we'll talk about the term confabulation, and that you can read that. That's a chapter in your textbook, chapter 2, in You Are Not So Smart. Take this away, though. Once you realize you are not so smart, then you are less dumb. Once you realize you are unaware, then you are more aware. I'll leave you with that. See you soon.